All right. Hello, and welcome to our Community Spotlight. I'm Dr. Carolina Tillotson. I'm the owner of the Wellness Connection. And today we are featuring our neighbor and friend, David Munn, who is the owner of the business Flowasis. So a little bit about David. He is originally from the west coast of Scotland, moved over to Massachusetts with his family when he was 10. And over the years, he's been a hairdresser, worked at several salons in Boston and New York, and eventually settled in Atlanta in 1999. David is an award-winning hairstylist and photographer and has spoken all around North America and across Europe. And today we are featuring David because he is our neighbor and again, owner of the business Flowasis, which is a departure from his original career. And so David, welcome.
Thank you. Thanks for having me.
And tell us a little bit about how you came into owning Flowasis.
A couple different reasons. I started having the realization the last couple of years of my career that I'd been doing it since I was 17 years old, and letting a 17-year-old tell you what you were going to do for the rest of your life just seems preposterous. I mean, you wouldn't do it. So that was the first realization, that I was doing this path that I just set myself on. And I'm a bit of a polymath. I do a lot of different things. I play multiple instruments. I'm a photographer. I do woodworking and so on and so forth. And I'm constantly exploring new things. So when I hurt my back about 6 years ago, I had to get a couple surgeries. And standing on your feet for 10 hours a day when you had to walk with a cane, and the pain I couldn't describe. I'm sure a lot of people out there know what I'm talking about with back surgeries. I needed to do something new, and I've always been as altruistic as I can, and I've always enjoyed being at the service of others in some way or the other. You know, ever since I was a little kid, getting people cups of tea or lighting my grandmother's cigarette. I just love those little acts of kindness, and it just led me down the path. We're floating, my wife and I were floating already, and she comes from a medical background. She works at a plastic surgery center, and I worked in salons and just had more of that approach and aesthetic, and we just weren't seeing it in the float industry. So took it upon ourselves to create it.
I absolutely love that. And one thing that, whenever you do visit David, because you have to, I've been there, and he's got a beautiful space. And you can see that these like gifts and talents and these things, this service that he just talked about that he loves to do, you see that reflected from the moment that you walk in the door, which is really refreshing.
Well, in the ways that even the front desk was built by my dad and stepdad, and every little touch that's in there was done by us, not the contractor. So we enjoyed it on some level.
It's always more enjoyable once it's already done, it seems.
Exactly.
When you can look back and be like, wow, that's beautiful. So how long did it take you to open Flowasis?
Well, as you know, as you've heard, 2020 was a bit of a bugger for everyone, wasn't it? So we had a lot of challenges. We started the business plan late 2018. By mid 2019, it was a very serious thing that we were actually starting to put money towards. It wasn't just a plan anymore. And then we were finally done December of 2020. But I mean, a whole bunch of stuff that happened in 2020 that was really, really, really bad. We had actually bought 4 tanks from England originally. And when it came time to ship them, the manufacturer refused shipment and refused our money back. And so you can imagine that I emptied my life savings to buy all these things and to open the place. But all of a sudden I have a deficit of $120,000 and no tanks, no business. So we had to purchase 4 more tanks. That and more. One of the hardest things, honestly, was the bank that we had to lend our loan from after COVID and the lockdown happened, even though we had closed our loan, they wanted us to go back and rewrite our numbers to reflect the pandemic, and in a way to catastrophize our own numbers so that they could have an excuse to close us. So that was another challenge that was unforeseen, that we had to come up with even more money. So anyone that's trying to do a business, just know it's going to take you at least 2-3 years, and you're not going to like it.
Yeah, there's, I say that, you know, owning a business is not for the faint of heart, even opening one. There's a definite resilience that you have to tap into during that process.
The core of what the business is and what it takes to open it are two very, very different things. So here we are trying to be a place where you can heal your body and your mind at the same time, which is, you know, a nice thing to do. But what it took to get there, to build that thing, was much, much harder, and had nothing to do with the core of the business itself. You know, it was just all about the banks and contractors and architects and all the little bits and pieces that go into it, you know. And it's evolving. I think if you come into Flowasis 3 months from now, you'll notice new things. You know, it will grow, it will evolve. We're going to find new ways of making the experience better, even if it's just little visual things and, you know, little niceties. They'll be there. So
I love that. Talk to me about what you hope people walk away from, or like what part of the experience do you hope people get?
if you're coming to a float tank, chances are it's not just for the novelty of it, but it is a sensation that you haven't felt anywhere else. Being without gravity on your body feels really nice. But I think there's going to be underpinning issues that are maybe bigger, stress, anxiety. In my case, well, those things plus, you know, chronic pain, nerve damage that I had. So, I mean, my true hope is that people will come here and learn how to float, and learn how to have a successful float. And that sounds interesting because all you're doing is lying there, but I think there's some meditative practice that goes into it as well. But once you start having those successful floats, walking out of here just feeling like you've had a weight lifted, you know, like that walking on air, just got back from vacation, your pain's not as bad, you can focus on the things you need to focus on, and just having a little bit of repair, even if it's for the day or you know, the following day as well. So
Sure. And how long does it take for someone to learn to float?
it varies from person to
Well.
person. Float well.
Float well.
Instantly you're going to float well.
Right.
there's no doing that wrong. It's just going to hold you up. But to learn how to have a successful float is a bit about turning off your mind, isn't it? You know, but you had a float last week.
I did.
And tell us about your experience.
Yeah, so, and I posted a little bit about that online. So for anyone who wants to look at it, they can check out the Instagram or on Facebook. But yeah, there's a bit of a process of letting go, that of surrender to that experience, because it is different than anything else.
Yeah, I would say at its core, it's kind of a meditative practice, but I've been really careful about this kind of stuff because I'm not a guru. I'm not I'm not any kind of shaman, or nor do I, you know, want to be that. But to be able to quiet your mind takes a bit of breathing that is, in essence, meditative practice. So what we've been doing here is giving some soft introduction to that meditation. We do a couple quick breathing techniques, tell people to focus on the breath. If their thoughts get away from them, there's a technique that we teach to bring your thought back and center yourself and really focus on that breathing. But by saying that, that's all meditation talk, right? But at the same time, I don't want to make the impression that, you know, I'm your meditation guru. I simply have the equipment that's going to make it a million times deeper if you do those things inside. Because even if you're having a nice meditative session, you still have the bed or the carpet underneath you. You still have your surroundings. You still have, you know, the pressure of the sounds in the room, whatever it is. With a float tank, you have none of that. You can't feel anything. You can't see anything. You can't hear anything. So when you breathe deeply and do that meditative practice, you're truly going inward to a place that you can't achieve that anywhere else. And I mean, you and I know there's been a bunch of studies on what that does to brainwave patterns and how that can actually influence the body as well. It's like 4 hours of restful sleep for an hour in the float tank, just by breathing. But you know, those things are important, particularly these days. You know, there's you know, tons of apps. That the number one and the number two most popular apps in the App Store right now are both meditation apps. Number one and number two. Television shows are coming out. My kids actually just got this like little animal sound thing. It looks like a turtle with a speaker on it.
Yes.
You press any button. You've seen that, right?
I have.
So my kids are meditating, which is great too, because you need that sharp relief from, you know, Roblox or the iPad into something where you can just calm your mind down to nothing. We all need it. We all need it.
We absolutely do. There's one of the things I love about your practice, and you know, when I came to Flow, so in my practice, we're actually doing the 21 days of meditation together as a community for whoever wants to participate. And part of that process is teaching people that meditation isn't a one size fits all. There are many ways to do it, because the end goal is, can you be present with yourself? Can you be still? And in this world that we live in that is chaotic, and stress has definitely changed over the past year. We've always had stressors, but it's continuing to change. Now more than ever, we have to learn ways to still ourselves so that we're not in that fight or flight and amped up mode. And so your facility allows people to have that experience of stepping out of chaos into being able to practice stillness, which is one thing I really love about it.
It's not just breathing though, is it? I think it's every walk of life. I started doing this, I mean, as far as like meditation and trying to quiet external stimulus, you know, figuratively as well as literally here. It takes a practice of a lot of things. For example, you know, obviously the news is tough to watch, so I don't. And if you're an empathic person, which I'm very empathic, that you know, you take bits of trauma away with you every day, even if you don't realize it. You know, that these little bits of things. So when we read about somebody in Yemen, for example, or see that image of a child covered in dust that's walking out of a bombed building, you know that they've lost a parent. You can't help when you see that, but be really empathic towards that kid, especially if you have children yourself, you know, because you can project, you can be that empathic person. But unfortunately, the hard truth of that is that in that moment, what can you personally do for that person? And the answer is nothing. I mean, certainly this, you know, writing your embassy or voting is always a good thing to do. But in that very moment for that child, unless you're a first responder in Yemen, there's really nothing you can do. So as harsh as it sounds, the only thing you can really do to make yourself feel better is not witness it. So when you turn it off and it's not a stimulus for you anymore, you can focus on just the true important people around you. And I don't say that to be harsh, because of course that's a horrible thing for anyone to see or witness or experience. But I can't do anything. So therefore I just have to, you know, go play ball with my son because I can. And that does tremendous things as well. Also, there's a lot of chat about being grateful. And I don't know if people confuse that, you know, like I'm grateful for my BMW and my awesome house and this, you know, this Tag Heuer watch is sure great, which they are great as well. But what about being grateful for just having eyelashes? or how about this? How about being grateful that car that's going 5 miles under the speed limit on the road and keeping you from, or making you late? How about being grateful for that driver of teaching you patience? Or thinking laterally as well, like what if that driver What if the car is not working? What if that person can't see very well? What if, whatever the excuse is, but not just thinking about the stuff you have, because if you think about gratefulness as materialism, you're doing it wrong.
Mm-hmm.
But if you think about gratefulness about the love of your child, that's a bit more in line. So, God, I really am sounding like a hippie, aren't
I? Those are all very true principles. And one of the great things is that when we choose to practice meditation, when we choose to do mindfulness, when we choose to float, when we choose to get chiropractic, when we choose to do those things that allow us to come out of these high stress states, we're able to show up as a full person. We're able to go out into the world and serve and really tap into that part of ourselves that can feel gratitude, that can heal, that can show up for our kids. And so, the goal whenever I'm with people is I want them to be able to live their best, fullest life for what is perfect for them. And it sounds like Flowasis is also another resource for people to be able to come home to themselves so that they can heal themselves and then show up fully as they need to in the community.
I'll just describe the experience for anyone that hasn't actually floated, because we haven't done that yet.
Yes, let's please go through that experience.
So essentially we have these massive bathtubs. They could fit somebody 7'4". It's a big clamshell looking thing. If anyone remembers Mork and Mindy, it's kind of akin to Mork's spaceship. But ours are really cool because they empty and fill between visits, which is unique, and it's also very sterile. So we have a very clean float environment. But once you're in the tank, you have 200 plus gallons of water that's been warmed to your skin temperature. And you're adding in over half a ton of Epsom salt. So like the Dead Sea, it floats you effortlessly.
Mm-hmm.
And then because it's warmed to your skin temperature, and so is the air in the room, that when we turn the lights out and we're in massive soundproof rooms, that your brain is kind of tricked into thinking it's floating in outer space. So with no external stimulus, your mind turns inward. And then with some breathing exercises, you're able to just let that thought go altogether. And your brain technically should go into what's called a theta brainwave. Mm-hmm. And that's that state between being awake and being asleep. Mm-hmm. And it's kind of the brainwave that Buddhist monks practice for decades to get to. And it's pretty incredible once you're there. I've had people that have had experiences of seeing light, hearing sounds. I had one person have an actual hallucination, and not in a scary way and not in a drug way. If I told you who the person was, you'd actually know who she was. So I'll keep her secret. But it profoundly, almost, she's religious, so I could say for her it was almost a religious experience to have this visitation of sorts. Mm-hmm. That's maybe not the norm. It's just anecdotally telling you what the brain can do when you're isolated like that. But more than anything, if you've done it, it just leaves you profoundly relaxed and calm, and just that physical weight's been taken off. Particularly if you do it, once a week, or at least once a month, I think would be good practice for. It's meditation on a much, much deeper level.
Sure. I was going to ask, how often do you recommend the average person come in?
I would say twice a month would be great.
Twice a month.
Yeah. We already have people that have been coming once a week. I try once a week myself. And as a business owner, getting to actually do your own thing is harder than you think it is. But
it certainly is.
Yeah. Right.
Can you float too much?
I don't think so.
Is that a thing? Okay. I can't see where that would come up, but I was just curious if there's.
Well, people get compulsive about all sorts of things. So if you're an impulsive person and you floated at 1 p.m. and you're back at 4, maybe just go home.
Okay. Come back tomorrow. Come back next week.
Exactly.
What's probably one of the top questions people ask you that they're always curious about?
When we were researching, I'm a retired hairdresser, as you mentioned. So I had 2 years of a clientele to ask. Like literally, I'd be asking 10 people a day what they thought. And it was always the same two things. It was hygiene and claustrophobia. And again, good reason why we brought in these tanks specifically from Europe is that they're the only ones that empty, as I mentioned. So, the solution is sterilized and the empty tub is sterilized between guests. And as far as claustrophobia, you can leave the lid open and have an open pod float in these as well. So there's no claustrophobic. Plus we can leave the lights on, plus we can put music on. I'm going to start doing guided meditations
I love
shortly for some people if they'd like. And yeah, but definitely that's the thing people are most curious about is just, am I going to panic in here?
Right. Like, is it going to close or whatever? And you have total control as someone who goes in, if you want to keep it open or close it or lights on, lights off, which makes it that much more comfortable for the experience. And then Flowasis isn't just about float tanks. You have other
saunas
things
as well, as I'm sitting in one of them.
So tell us about the saunas.
This one's not on, by the way. I'd be dripping if I was, yeah. Well, I kind of have to tell you a bit about myself as in regard to everything here is that I am very science-based, that I read, I'm constantly evolving as far as my education goes as well. And I was aware up front that the float tanks are often put into the woo-woo category. People will add on other services that are, I don't want to name any to offend any, but not science-based, no double blinds, no peer-reviewed studies, that kind of thing, just simply things that maybe just feel good, but they're promising health results from, right?
Sure.
So with the example of saunas, I can say that because I've got them here, that these lights that I have here that change color.
Very cool.
Some places will advertise that as, dang it. Right. Some people will advertise that as chromotherapy, right? And they'll say that green is good for pain, red is great for weight loss or whatever. I'm not saying that. I can't say that because I've never found a paper that's been written that proves that. But what I can say about saunas is that they are profoundly healing for a number of things. In fact, there was a study that was a 20-year study that was done in Finland that shows sauna use 3 to 5 times a week has a 40% reduction in all-cause mortality. And that means cardiovascular disease, cancer, heart disease. I mean, just a great number of things, but it's been studied extensively. So I'll tell you about those things.
Very cool. And so before we wrap up, I would love for you to tell us, how do you take care of yourself? What's your favorite way to give back to yourself and stay healthy?
No. Everyone that's watching this knows it's effort all the time. So I do yoga. I do stretch. I actually sauna every day. I have a sauna in my bedroom that I do every day. I try and float once a week. I don't drink, and I've been trying to do good on my diet. 2020 I started eating too much, as we all did. Well, here's the thing. I mean, you couldn't really have perishable foods like you used to, right? So if you're on lockdown, you were eating all these dry goods. And I've got 2 kids, so there was always granola bars and cookies and stuff around. And so I put on some weight. And my dad was picking up my son the other day. He walks in, he goes, "You're really putting on the beef there, aren't you?" And he's like, "Oh, you're looking a bit fat." I'm like, "Oh, great." So I'm on a diet now.
Leave it, Dad.
Yeah, I mean, And plus, if Scottish people are just the most direct people on the planet. Unfortunately, I do it without an accent, so I'm direct, but I sound American, so people just, But he was right, So, but a couple of years ago, I had my diet, or our diet, completely dialed in. We were doing mainly ketogenic. Yoga and stretching, which is very, very important. I do supplements every day. Iron is important for me. D3 and K in combination. B vitamins, yeah, a fistful of vitamins every day, and fish oil and that kind of thing. So we try, like everybody else, we try. But the diet was the least consistent this year, according to my dad.
Well, it sounds like you're doing really wonderful things, and that you're doing it as a family, which is even more powerful and makes it more sustainable if you've got a group doing it versus, trying to do it by yourself and then everybody else doing something different.
Absolutely. Yeah. You got to teach the kids early. I still have a memory of when I was maybe 6 years old. My mother took me to a yoga class, and they put a wine cork, and I was meant to breathe around the cork. I can't remember the purpose of it, but maybe an alcoholic for my 20s.
Oh, no.
I'm just joking. So through my 40s. But that breathing exercise was always something that stayed with me from a very young age. So I've always kind of known the power of breath and doing yoga and that kind of thing.
I love it. David, thank you so much for being willing to share about Flowasis. And
Thanks for having me.
If you haven't stopped by, please do, and tell him hello and that you were able to see him on the Community Spotlight. And again, I'm Dr. Carolina with the Wellness Connection, and I will see you at our next Community Spotlight.